to Consul General. Ladies and gentlemen, great pleasure to be back here in Sydney. And as you rightly noted, I think it's my fifth visit in about 2.5 years. And this time, the peg for it was the formal opening of our Consulate General in Brisbane, which I did 3 days ago. After that, I was in Canberra. Had the opportunity to spend time with my counterpart, with the Prime Minister, with the Deputy Prime Minister, with the Leader of Opposition, Members of Parliament. And as the Consul General said, we have today a relationship which can truly call a comprehensive strategic partnership. Those words have a particular meaning. And why this gathering is important is a comprehensive strategic partnership will only be that when it has an adequate economic and business content. So this aspect of our ties, I think, is very important and one to which I personally attach a great deal of importance. Now, I'm the Foreign Minister, I'm not the Finance Minister, I'm not the Trade Minister, but I am a member of what we call the Cabinet Committee of Economic Affairs, so a small group of ministers with the Prime Minister who focused on the economic policy making for the country. And as a working proposition, three of us, the Finance Minister, the Trade Minister and myself, we meet and work in very, very close consultation. That's really how we take forward our foreign economic relationship. And in this, in a way, the responsibility of the Foreign Minister and the Foreign Ministry is also to create that larger enabling climate, because often these may not be narrow trade or finance policies alone which can drive a relationship, but there are a lot of other things which go along with it. Now, most of you are familiar with recent developments in India, and I would, in a way, sum up these changes of the last decade as driven by six factors, in my view. One, the political stability that we've had after 60 years. We've had a government which has enjoyed 3 successive mandates, so it allows that stability actually allows for in a sense a degree of policy consideration and decision making, which is hard to do if the changes occur more frequently, because as someone who spent a lifetime in the government, every time there is actually a transition, there is a certain disruption which accompanies that transition. The second factor is a very determined, making it easier to do business approach. Hopefully some of it has been perceived by all of you. And again, we regard this very much as work in progress. Happy to have achieved what we have, but very conscious that there's still many things we need to tackle. The third is what we call ease of living, which is making it generally easier to operate in India, not just for businesses, but for the common citizen of the country or of the world. So how do you de-bureaucratize our existence in a way? How do you make travel easier? How do you cut down the number of forms and applications and waiting processes and all of that? The fourth relates to infrastructure. We have, with a lot of effort and attention and application of technology today, devised a kind of a infrastructure plan. We have a word for it in our language. It's called Gati Shakti. It's like you're trying to speed up. It's a power of efficiency or speed in a way. The idea is really to try to assemble together all conceivable considerations which would go into infrastructure development, so that when you make that decision, it's not that you later on discover there was an environmental issue, or there was a political issue, or there was a geological issue, or there was a habitation issue. So how do you actually, and we've got close to about, I think, 2,000 different layers of input, which allows then for faster decision making where infrastructure is concerned, and that's actually beginning to have an impact on the ground, and I will give you some examples to tell you why. The fifth one relates to the digital public infrastructure, and really applying the digital identity and for governance purposes, as well for business purposes, as well as for delivery of benefits and services. And here again, it's actually helped us in many ways to scale up, governance and delivery in a way in which it would have been inconceivable, and that's had a very positive impact on growth. And finally, the human resources side, where put very simply, I would say the educational institutions of India have actually literally doubled in capacity in the last 10 years. I mean, if you were to look at the number of universities, the number of colleges, the number of technical institutions, the number of schools, they are roughly 2 to 2.5x from where they stood in 2014, which in absolute numbers, if I were to take colleges, for example, means creating 2 new colleges a day. Now, the result of all of this, if I were to give it to you numbers, today infrastructure, for example, for a country where this has long been our problem, we are building about 27, 28 kilometers of highway a day. On railways, which is so critical for our movement, and many of you come from industries which recognize its importance. For us, railways has actually in the past impacted logistics, impacted energy. We had an energy crisis because we had actually a railway wagon crisis at one point of time. Today, that same sector, we are building 12 to 14 kilometers of railway track a day. Similarly, if you look at aviation, where in contrast to many other parts of the world, our aviation, I'm happy to say, is doing very well. In fact, the current challenge we have is that there are about 1,000 new aircraft on order, and they're not coming in as fast as we would like. But in terms of the infrastructure, again, on average in the last decade, we've built 7.5 new airports a year. So there are 75 new airports which have been added on in the last 10 years. Similarly, I spoke about the digitization of the country. Of the most, the most common example of it are the transactions, the micro transactions you see. Even street vendors today, do their payments. They prefer QR code to returning the change for your larger note. And just the volume of the transactions is interesting because it shows a society ready to embrace digitization. So even if the transactions are small, I mean, we still do on average about 11 to 12 billion transactions a month, which is, I mean, easily about 2-3 times what the next one I think after us is Brazil, if I'm not mistaken. But the US does about 4.5, I think, a year. But I cite that not so much for the volumes. I admit, that our volumes are small, but it shows the society's readiness to embrace digital medium. And if today we can confidently say that we are a 8% growth rate economy with a few decades of that kind of growth rate ahead of us. Now, other than throwing those numbers at you, there's a reason why I'm saying that. Because that kind of growth rate will require a different kind of resources. That it's not a growth rate which can be fueled by the current quality of relationships and the current volume of our trading with the world. So in our growth, and this growth is really a very, very broad-based growth. I mean, you can see it in the FMCG demand, in the tech durable demand, in the expectation of, you're looking at the steel sector, for steel demand growing by 9 to 10% a year. So given all of this, we are actually, for us, those partners who have the natural complementarity to support this growth or to partner this growth. I think they have a certain special importance in our eyes, and certainly I think you would agree that Australia qualifies to be one of them. Now, in terms of foreign policy itself, as I said, we think of it increasingly as purposed for accelerating this growth and development that I'm speaking about. In foreign policy, our objective is today to promote greater investments, to seek technology, joint ventures, best practices. And in fact, as I said, the CEO Forum report was something that we looked at. I spoke to Minister Goyal yesterday when I was on my way to Sydney, and certainly, our intention is to look at this and use it as a base for further conversation and discussions. Now, having spoken about India, I am the foreign minister, so it would be remiss of me not to speak a little bit about the world. And as you say, I do believe something happened yesterday.
Just a small thing.
Yes. So I think there are probably, to my mind, 4 or 5 important consequences for the relationship and for the business aspect of the relationship. One, there was already a reordering of supply chains which was taking place. It is very likely that in view of the election results yesterday in the US, that this would accelerate. I'd be very candid with you. I mean, some of it would certainly be somewhat disruptive, but we in India perceive it as an opportunity, because having kind of missed the manufacturing bus in the 1990s, early 2000s, we do think that this reordering of supply chain gives us a sort of second bite of the apple, and maybe this time around, starting with Apple, we are doing better than we were doing earlier. The second, there will be, in a way, more geopolitical hedging. That what will inevitably happen as a consequence of policies which we can, at least those parts of it we can safely predict, will be many more of us would be seeking more relationships to keep life stable. The third pertains to the digital side, and the digital side now pretty much covers everything. And what has happened, what has been happening and will continue to intensify is issues about in a way of trust and what accompanies the digital aspect of a product or a service or a technology, I think will come under greater scrutiny. And it will reflect itself in different fields. I mean, you've seen that already in semiconductors, where there's a very conscious attempt at diversification of production, and the drive towards AI will further accelerate this. So digital payment platforms, for example, would become, in a sense, more valuable, but also which platform to use with whom becomes an important question. A fourth one to my mind is mobility of talent and skills, because even as there is a re-globalization or reworking of the current architecture, apart from the technology changes, I think the demographic unevenness of the world is beginning to bite us. That there would be economies where the demand would be high, the talents may not be plentiful, it could be different in other places. And what will happen, in a sense, is already happening. And I can, give you some very interesting numbers here, is we will be moving, my guess is perhaps in the next few years, to a much more integrated global workplace. That many countries, and it'll be, to my mind, even a United States under Donald Trump, will make a distinction in immigration and mobility. That for them, economically justified mobility will have to be fostered, while those where the economic value is less or negative will have to be managed. So this is going to be, in fact, I tell my colleagues in foreign policy, I actually think for us, at least in India, it's going to be one of the top 3 priorities. That how do you create and manage and optimize a global workplace? Now the global workplace doesn't mean that the talent alone has to move. Businesses can move as well. We've already seen in the last few years, right now by the last count, we have about 1,800 global capability centers in India, which between them generate about $150 billion worth of exports. So we see this trend intensifying, because the more technology-driven, more digital era is going to require a certain concentration and access to skills and talent. So whether the talent goes to the business or the business goes to the talent, that's a decision which corporates will be making. And finally, we do think that, again, politics notwithstanding, the world will be greener. That while the pace of the greening of the economy may vary, definitely, if one looks today, we are certainly taking a big bet on green hydrogen, on green ammonia. We are thinking of green shipping corridors. Electric mobility is already upon us. We are looking at biodiesel. In fact, that's something we are pushing very strongly, at sustainable aviation fuel. So that whole world is green steel. These are going to come. Politics or no politics, it may come faster, it may come in some countries more than other countries, but it will actually not stop as a global trend. So these, to my mind, would be the geopolitical factors we have to contend with, and which our relationship. Now we can either sit back and watch it, resist it in some cases, or leverage it in many cases. That choice is up to us. We as relationship managers, all of you as enterprises with a stake in it. So that's the broad picture. One last word. As I said, it helps when you are re-elected. It helps even more when you're re-elected twice. So we've got off to a fast start. We've done less than 150 days of the third term. But even in this period, we have made we've taken some very big calls. Among the calls which might be of interest to you, one is to set up 12 major industrial zones across India with a view to attracting global manufacturing and promoting domestic manufacturing. Secondly, to double down on the infrastructure spending, because the infrastructure investments are still primarily driven by government spending. So we will continue to do that, and we hope to see a greater private sector involvement there. And we intend to connect that to the zones in question. Three, a big focus on human resources development, on skills. We are encouraging corporates to do more internship. There's a kind of a Prime Minister's internship scheme which we have announced for prepare for promote stronger rural growth, because again, historically that's been the laggard sector. That's changing now. So as the agrarian economy really sort of gets better value for its production, we are seeing actually the gaps between industrial growth and rural growth narrow in comparison to the past. And finally, as I said, prepare for this different world which we are looking at, a world of AI, a world of EV, a world of really greener services and greener products. So that's really the picture which I want to present to you. I'd be very happy to listen to any comments you have, any suggestions, any problems. And I do say this, if you have problems, we would frankly like to hear from you, maybe in front of others, but maybe not. Maybe you want to tell us separately. My own experience with many other relationships, and I myself earlier on been servicing CEO forums with some countries, is probably the best thing which can happen is if you give us a specific problem and we solve it for you, and then word travels, that might actually do more to enhance our credibility and effectiveness than any speech that I can give. So you have an invitation. I won't be solving it, but I will certainly be passing it on to the people. And one of the good things about not having a direct jurisdiction is you can pretty much sort of poke your nose into everybody else's business, which I'm quite given to do. So thank you again, and I look forward to hearing from you.